Are you curious about the future of finance? How do you think the combination of AI and blockchain will reshape global markets and how we do everyday financial transactions? This and more we'll explore together with Tanvi Singh. Yes, Tanvi, a warm welcome from my side. Thanks for joining
having me
today. Wonderful to have you here. Yeah, you have a remarkable career at the intersection of digital transformation, AI, blockchain. And what inspired your journey into the world of digital assets?
Entrepreneurship. I call it corporate entrepreneurship. And I came into Switzerland from my parent company. And I decided to complete my 2 years expat and settle down in the country, went back to the university. And from there on, I did not plan my career. The career planned itself. So my first role was to be a corporate entrepreneur to set up the data science center for wealth management at Credit Suisse.
How many years ago?
That was 10 years back, actually. Would be completing a decade in Swiss banking now.
Yes.
And that was a really successful event, so to say, in terms of setting up the biggest data science center for Credit Suisse. We've named as the biggest financial data science center across Europe, not just Switzerland, and a very successful one in terms of us carving and giving birth to data scientists in finance in the 2012s and 2013s. That's when this concept of data scientists did not exist. So with that, the journey continued, and every time we had a new technology coming in, the leaders of the bank, the CXOs of the bank always would give me that specific position. So to give you a view, I never got into a role that existed before. I always created a new role and then gave up my roles to my subsequent successors.
Yeah, but you're very knowledgeable in the area of IT, not only business.
Yes, that's right. I grew up as a IMLP, which is an information management leadership program at General Electric in the early 2000s. So you can now guess my age. But with that, was trained from the very beginning to not just be good at tech, not understanding the business, not be just a business person, not understanding the backbone of tech. And everything is connected with data. So I come from the age of Six Sigma. I was a Six Sigma Master Black Belt to now being an AI expert in my last roles. I had the advantage of and the privilege of being the group head of AI data and analytics for UBS. And then in the entrepreneurial streak, I was asked to head up the digital asset technology for the UBS group.
I see. Yeah, you have many years of international experience as a leader. And how do you see the global landscape for digital assets evolving right now? And so particularly also, different areas compared with each other, Europe, Asia, the US.
When it comes to other technologies, we all know that America always is on top of innovation, on top of not just innovation, but execution of innovation at scale.
Not only regulation, but actual innovation.
Innovation and execution. That's what I call the term. And the rest of the world just tends to follow it. The next follower, of course, is China, that actually literally have no regulations, so much more easier to get into that scale up of execution of innovation. But fortunately or unfortunately for digital assets, that hasn't been the case. We in Europe were the first, or specifically in Switzerland, were the first ones to not just innovate, but execute and regulate the digital asset and the blockchain technology. Obviously, Ethereum was born here in Zug. We are celebrating 10th year anniversary of Ethereum in a few weeks. So all of that gave in a lot of first mover advantage to Switzerland and to the broader European infrastructure. But unfortunately, now it seems to me that Asia and the Middle East is doing a lot more innovative stuff and also using this innovation for execution and creating regulations
actual
that
business,
are exactly actual business use cases. Now, if you look at NEOM as one of the projects from Saudi Arabia, I know there are hypes and not everything is as good as it sits on the paper. But having looked into the blueprint of how they are now building up the digital asset ecosystem, that is only something that we in Europe can dream. And when it comes to Americas, I think we're all looking at what happens in November, and that determines what happens to digital assets next.
Yeah, I mean, we can say blockchain is still a hot topic, but it blockchain technology overpromise and underdeliver. I mean, my impression was a lot of hype was created, and then we didn't see many actual use cases. Will that situation change now? Do you see a lot of momentum?
I think I'll have 2 points to that, right? First of all, people used to say blockchain is a great technology looking for a problem to be solved, right? It's a solution looking for a problem, and I'm not the first one. We hear that all the time. But what I also saw in the process, that the DeFi word, when it came in big and strong in the last bull run, people started to believe that code is the law. You won't need the lawmakers, you won't need any trusted parties, and all of that could be done through code. And we have seen multiple different so-called code-related projects being absolutely frauds. So people did not believe that decentralized finance without having a central authority to trust is going to do the job. What I'm very hopeful for is now we do have an ecosystem which is slowly and very quickly building up, which is an inclusion of the traditional finance to bring in the trust, and the inclusion of the blockchain technology that brings in the automation. So if code is not going to be the law, but code is going to be the automation that gets rid of reconciliation, that gets rid of any inefficiencies in the traditional finance market, then that combination now is what we can all look forward to grow dramatically and exponentially.
So combining the trust of TradFi, you could say, with the innovation potential of the DeFi ecosystem.
Right. So by itself, the traditional finance, or by itself, the decentralized finance, as an example, cannot survive. If they start looking to work together, and we have seen it over the last years with multiple different conferences. Now, it's very hard to now go into a conference which is just DeFi, right? We used to call like a Bitcoin maximist. Even there, you see traditional finance now going in. You see Mr. Trump coming in, right, into those kind of conversations. Plus, we had 0.0 Forum, which used to be just the traditional finance, and BIS being the participants. And now you see a lot of very trusted and very well-respected L1 players to be part of the 0.0 Forum as well. And now we all know Token 2049 is happening as we speak, so which is a very, very good mix of, a very equal mix of traditional and the new incumbent players.
Yeah, I actually hope a lot that the 0.0 Forum, I think, is an excellent for international forum, will continue in the years to come. And now for financial institutions that try to adopt blockchain technology and digital assets at scale, where are the most, also the benefits and major challenges for them?
I try to describe it in a form that says any traditional finance, when you start getting your assets smarter and your liabilities dumb, is when the velocity of money starts to increase. And when the velocity of money increases, it lowers down inflation and it invigorates the economy really, really well. One way of increasing the velocity of money is obviously reducing the interest rates that we have just seen.
Yes, again.
In preparation for the upcoming November elections. But I think that would have a ripple effect of getting the economy, get a very needed boost and pump.
You cannot always lower that. So it's a tool that expires its efficiency.
And used only at specific periods in time. So for now, Americas is doing it not 0.25 but 0.5 to make sure that the November elections go in favor of the ruling party. But having said that, if you can figure out a way to make your assets smarter and your liabilities dumb, that's when traditional finance or any banking financial sector is going to find the use of any technology very useful. And if you look at what tokenization and what blockchain as a technology can do, it helps increase the asset smartness. So giving you an example, real estate is a dumb asset because you cannot just keep evaluating what the value of your real asset is. But when you tokenize a real asset and it starts getting onto an exchange like PX Digital at some point, then that is an asset that gets smarter, it gets more information sensitive, and that's when it's a very big benefit for traditional finance industry to start using the technology.
Do you see like other use cases that could be very interesting for a public market especially?
Yes, funds. I'm a very big fan of what iCapital is doing. UBS has, I think, very recently now started to move some of their very small funds onto iCapital. If you're managing a fund, if you've ever managed a fund, you know how hard it is to manage the back end, the compliance, onboarding your clients, giving reporting. And if you can do this over blockchain, which it exactly can give you the transparency of how your funds are used and where they are coming from and what reporting requirements are needed, then that's an excellent example of what iCapital kind of projects can do. We at UBS, as the last project, also used a public chain to tokenize structured products. And that is another fascinating topic. Where traditional finance can benefit from this technology in a huge way, because then you're making your assets a lot more smarter, again, using the same theory and giving the possibility of many, many people to invest and many more insurers to be part of the value chain. Yeah. The challenge is we need a much more seamless set of regulations to make this happen. To give you some sort of background on how long this process for us at UBS took to get this structured product on chain. Wasn't the technology. I think teams were excellent in getting it done in 3-4 months of time, where we were stuck with all these lawyer agreements and all these different regulators between Hong Kong, Singapore, US,
across different
UK and
regions,
Switzerland. And
challenge.
That took us more than a year and a half to just get the regulations in place and to convince the regulators on what we are trying to do.
Yeah, but respect them. Once you have established it, you can repeat it again, hopefully, yes.
That would be the idea. And I think now with BIS's big vision of the FintraNet, I highly recommend everyone to at least get an idea of what FintraNet is. It's not going to be implemented in the next years, but it definitely gives a vision of how the central banks are going to be interacting with money using the blockchain technology and how the inter-money transfer between countries and central banks is going to happen. And that would give the required set of cash flow on chains that is needed for any of the tokenized assets to start building up and not just experiments and innovations.
And in the past, you have led a lot of business projects at the intersection of AI, data analytics, and blockchain. How do you see these technologies complementing each other to have a very positive effect on the financial industry?
I think that has started to happen more so at scale, mainstream this year. Otherwise, the funny story has always been the data teams always believe the AI teams are very hypothetical. They promise a lot, don't do much. And then the digital asset teams are absolutely on another planet. So big organizations traditionally have the data team, the AI teams, and the digital asset teams. And the three teams don't talk to each other. So you cannot do a confluence of technologies if the teams do not have respect for each other and don't understand what they bring the value to the table.
Yeah, and what the other one is actually doing, huh?
So now that we've started to work more, and not just for one bank or two banks or banks and not the other organizations, is starting to build product competencies rather than horizontal competencies. And with that, you have data scientists and people who are experts in blockchain technologies and data people and product people, all part of one knitted team. And that is giving a lot of very significant use cases where blockchain and AI can talk to each other and can help each other. I'll state a few examples of now building up together with a lot of inputs from JP as well on what is the art of the possible on getting better oracles to our blockchains. Because we can be very confident of the data that's on chain, but the decisions are not just on chain. You also need very significant, very trustworthy data off chain. And that process can be streamlined, can be fact-checked across different sources of truth if you use AI into that process. Yeah. Likewise, another amazing area which most of the readers or most of the audiences could relate to would be on the use of construction of smart contracts and how do you audit them. You know, CMTA has different set of principles to get it done, but I have been through that process at UBS multiple times and it's a nightmare. So to put a smart contract at the testnet, everybody does it. It takes weeks. But to put a smart contract into production, that's a very hard one. And now with all the co-pilots that are surfacing, coming in from the boom in AI, a lot of that work, about 80% of the work can be automated. without us having to hire very specialized individuals.
Okay, it's way more efficient to actually deploy this technology in the real life.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about, am I having the right experts to deploy smart contracts into production? Where are they going to come from? Are they going to leave me in the middle of the process? Because you can do a lot with a lot of new technologies, with a lot of new languages that the L1s are now building, to be able to use them very effectively in big companies. Yeah. And then on the other side, which is where blockchain helps AI, is where we see a lot of new companies that are being built on decentralized infrastructure. Because one of the biggest challenges with AI is, how do you trust an AI? What is the possibility for us to know what data it is consuming and how is it coming up with the answers for it not to be a black box anymore? So there are some really good projects now that I personally am working with that is being built on the decentralized infrastructure.
Yeah. And for internationally active companies, it's very important. Of course, they can roll out their services and products across regions, across jurisdictions. But how do you see, is there a lot of friction still at the border when it comes to regulation? Should regulators talk to each other more often to reduce these frictions?
I think the regulators just have to define and understand what they want. And that goes a lot in the education of the regulators. Then again, I have to commend the work that BIS is doing to make this happen at scale. They're running multiple different workshops to get all the regulators in one room, all the central bankers in one room to talk about what is AI, what are the standards needed there, because it's the same problem there, and what is blockchain and what are the standards needed there. Once we know what are the basic standards that is required by all regulators, and each jurisdiction can have its own very specific ones, depending on what they worry about or what is very local in nature. If you do have the basic, like you have to do the 80% in the market if you are running a blockchain solution across Europe, across America, and the rest 20% is based on the countries and the respective jurisdictions, I think that is going to take us a long way. But I'm very happy that a lot of work is now being done to start getting blockchain built on scale.
Yes, you mentioned the word education, obviously something that is very dear to both of our hearts. You have been involved in initiatives like Girls Can Code.Swiss, for instance, I have seen. Do you think we need to do more on that side to empower the next generation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we can talk global, but we can talk local. And to talk local, the youngsters, and I have two young girls, so I'm speaking from experience on their friends and their circles around, are the big consumers of technology. And we all live in a very privileged society here in Switzerland. They are using every new gadget that's on the table. But very few of them are working on the other side, which is building of technology. And if that is not what it's going to be in terms of people getting very comfortable to use the co-pilot of ChatGPT or using or thinking that they have to live with the technology, perhaps humanoid robots going forward 10 years later or 20 years later, then that is going to be an important education process for the younger generation. So my daughter, when she was 13, started Girls Can Code. And very quickly, the scale of the organization grew to a level where I had to join her being a treasurer. But that just gives a testament to the point that girls getting into technology is really important locally.
Yes.
Here into Switzerland, and Girls Can Code just doing some bit of effort in that direction.
Yeah. So, and taking out your glass ball and to predict the future, what are the key trends that you think will really shape the digital asset industry in the 5 years to come? What will be the major topics on the table?
I think BlackRock has already given us that mirror earlier this year when they talk about the tokenization industry to be the next big one. So I think that has been quite a reversal in BlackRock's position around blockchain and digital assets per se, versus they becoming the primary, spokes organization around what tokenization and what blockchain can do in the traditional finance space. Gaming is another huge area. In-game currency is becoming big.
It's a huge industry, right? Many people don't realize how big that industry is.
I mean, if you're above a certain age, it's very hard for you to understand how much the young generation spend time and how much do they buy and have economics related to the in-game currencies. So you got to be in that space to appreciate how large that market is. And the third big one is obviously payments. That's where we started to believe that blockchain and various different currencies are going to be very helpful to reduce the friction in payments. But we still use Visa and MasterCard as an underlying infrastructure. And nothing against those two beautiful protocols, and they themselves are doing a lot in blockchain, but we lose a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of reconciliation efforts to move money from one to another, which is seamless for blockchain. So payments would again remain to be a very, very interesting topic for blockchain, and I would hope and see that Latin America, Asia, and Africa would continue to keep building their payment rails on top of blockchain and not the traditional finance.
So and talking about delivering on the potential of blockchain, public or private blockchains?
Mix of both. And don't want to promote any specific blockchain, so to say, but we have worked in finance for a very long time. Putting every data out there in public is never going to work. To work in a private R3 Corda kind of a solution, which is an example of being completely private, we all know certain exchanges are built on top of it. That's not going to work. So I think we need interoperability between what we can say privacy-preserving public blockchains, and there are many now in the market that is coming up, plus also blockchains that are very catered to a use case. So if you look at cloud, for example, you go to a specific cloud solution, right? And then you go into specific products from the cloud solution that are very specific to our use cases. And we'll see a lot of the blockchain world to be very specific in what they can do best. And not to say that only the private blockchains would work and the public is never going to be of use. And now the new hype is on public, so private would not be of any effect.
Thanks for your honest view on that topic as well. Yeah, since you're here, I also wanted to take the chance to talk about the free trade agreement with India together with you. It's a little bit off topic for us as an exchange, but let's see how we will be affected in the future. Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, the Swiss government submitted its proposed free trade agreement with India to Parliament. For me, it was like a big thing to happen. People might not have realized. It means that mostly all of the exports from Switzerland to India would be like under that free trade agreement, and us getting access to 1.4 billion. 1.6 million people in India is like a huge step for a small country like Switzerland. And you were involved in that, so.
Yeah, I think the agreement was signed between the two countries in March of this year. And you wouldn't believe, after 16 years of negotiations. So it's 16 years of hard work between the policymakers in Bern and the policymakers in Delhi. So now that it was signed, the government in India started to look upon people like me and a few others who have half of their career in India and half of our careers here in Switzerland to help bridge the gap, which is also very cultural. To say the least,
of course, yeah.
To say the least, right? The Indians are not very specific when it comes to timing. To be in the meeting 30 minutes plus minus is very usual. And for the Swiss, plus minus 3 minutes is already big, right?
The tolerance, yes.
The tolerance, the quality, but also from an Indian perspective, managing complexity, I think, is a big one. And the world is getting complex every day, which in my view is going to be very, very helpful to Switzerland as we get our ways around. And as you mentioned, Parliament has agreed on that on the free trade agreement in a matter of minutes, I hear from Bern. So it's very, very positive. It's a lot of excitement in the Swiss ecosystem. What could be the value of getting their products out in the market, whether it's the watchmaking industry.
Yes.
My particular focus now is on the startup ecosystem and on the blockchain side of things. So I have now structured a new fund, Nirmata-ai Ventures. Anybody who's interested in knowing more, please follow our page. And our idea is to bring in a lot of the Indian companies that are very low in evaluation and can arbitrage to get them into Switzerland. Clean tech, biotech, and fintech are 3 areas that Switzerland is very strong in and is also a huge opportunity in India. And likewise, a lot of the Swiss companies that now can scale in India. So beyond the well-established watch companies, there's a huge potential also for the startup ecosystem. And when it comes to blockchain, I think BX Digital at some point could also benefit from that synergy. Because if you see in the broad landscape of different regions and countries, India is nowhere when it comes to blockchain because they haven't yet made up their mind, which we are hoping that 2025 is going to be that year. Yes. So that would open up 1.6 billion people into the blockchain market. And the technology and the developers in that space, as you know, are perhaps one of the best. And Hyderabad as a center is becoming really, really huge when it comes to blockchain ecosystem.
Yes, so we are both convinced that this agreement will lead to a win-win situation for both Switzerland and India.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
exciting.
Very
future
exciting.
Ahead. Thank you so much, Tanvi, for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. See you next time.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.